final episode in our webinar series, AI Boom or Bust. I'm Jonathan Crow, Director of Community at Ninja One.
I'm
And as
I'm
always, with
I'm
me,
Alex. Yeah, one of the co-founders over here at Empath.
Alex. This is it. We're rounding home plate. We're going to bring it home with looks into practical usage of AI. We've talked a lot about it the last 2 weeks from a very 30,000 foot view. How some very large MSPs are thinking about this, how they're incorporating it into their strategy, how they're spending a ton of money around this and really betting big. And then we talked last week about what are orgs doing both internal at Ninja and at Aavik via John Harden.
He's
How
in the
are
chat
orgs
already. Yeah, look at
actually
him.
doing this?
Yeah, it's super cool to hear because um and I want to make sure we dive deep into today's talk because the first talk was big strategy. The second talk was how are the big companies who have lots of resources to throw at this handling it. So it'll be fun today to kind of pivot to as the keyboard warrior, like as the one guy who's doing all the things, like how can I go click all the buttons to make it happen, right? These guys have some different experiences, some different expectations. Ashley's certainly been digging in and poking. She's got some amazing resources that I'm sure we'll be able to pry out of her fingers and share with the world. Um, yeah, gonna be some cool stuff today.
Absolutely. And great to see everybody in the chat. John, Robert, Abby, Emily, great names to see. Definitely don't be shy, everybody. As always, we really encourage you to jump right in. We'll have basically interactive Q&A throughout. We want to be hearing from you all just as much as we want to be talking to you. And so before we get the guests on, anything else, Alex, that you wanted to kind of share to give this some kind of perspective or anything?
Well, I mean, a lot of the perspective is my perspective has shifted a little the last week or two.
Really?
We heard some, yeah, I mean, I am admittedly the Luddite who's like, AI is coming for your job, but it can't spell strawberry. You're fine, right? And I kind of hold that view pretty tightly. But to hear some of those CEOs talk about it and say, hey, you know what? It's actually not going to displace any humans, and that's the wrong messaging. And the conversation is really that it will enable tier one people to do tier two work and enable us to build up tier two people faster. And um, seeing it as a coworker or as an assistant or as a tool and a lever up as opposed to some freestanding automaton thing that's just going to replace people, I think has been refreshing. Not just refreshing, but a little eye-opening to me because every time they say, it's AI is going to replace people, my brain literally turns into like remove person, insert AI, walk away. It's a one-to-one replacement. And my big takeaway was that it's not. It's a tool to make people a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit um, for them to be able to repeat the same result over and over and over with greater consistency.
Absolutely. Well, my guess is all of you watching, it's not as if you're approaching AI for the first time. We're all playing around with this, right? We're all seeing what can work and what doesn't for us. And luckily, we have two folks on the call here on this session who have been really diving in, and they're going to be sharing their perspectives with us. So I'm super excited to welcome Tom Lawrence and Ashley Cooper, the real one, from Roost and from Cyberdrain. So let's get them on the screen. And also, JP in the background reminds me, everybody, if you joined this series, if you signed up for it just to win a Secret Lab chair, we have not forgotten. We are going to give away a Secret Lab chair. We got a list of folks who have been to every session so far. That was the requirement. We'll announce a winner at the end of this, Alex. So we'll be giving away that chair.
Super excited for that.
I'm sorry to report that you weren't the only one who
attended all three.
The countess. Yeah.
I thought my odds were good. I was in on this.
All right. Well, yeah, let's get Tom and Ashley on here. Hey, Ashley. Hey, Tom.
Hello.
So good to have you. For those of you who don't know, Ashley, you want to give a little bit of background about what you're working on these days? You're involved in a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I've been kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything that just kind of supports you know, like our community, our products, our processes, and also just my entertainment of figuring out what I can do and what I used to not be able to do. So, you know, like I've always been an ops kind of person. I've always been trying to figure out what the next thing is, early adopting kind of anything that I can. And so driving a lot of the progress from automation and taking a lot of those things that I learned and figuring out, oh, like things aren't actually that different and things are kind of you're able to think about AI in similar ways that you've thought about a lot of disruptive things. And so been playing a lot about with that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining us. I mean, I remember in early conversation we had, you've been very generous with your time coming on Ninja One webinars in the past. And back when you were working with MSPs, you were looking at, you know, what are ways you can automate workflows. You were kind of hands-on into that, and you've always been beyond just what you're doing yourself, getting people together and enabling people to share their own learnings and really encouraging that. And so awesome to see you doing that here too.
Thank you.
And Tom Lawrence, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Tom, you of course, I mean, it should come no surprise to anyone watching that you've been hands-on with AI, playing around with stuff.
Yeah.
But you also get the perspective too, through your channel of hearing from tons of vendors about it, you know, what they're saying, and then also leading your own community of folks and seeing these conversations roll out. So yeah, super excited to get your perspective.
But yeah, and I also just touch back on something. Saying that Ash makes it fun, kind of understated. She makes a lot of fun, silly things that are thought-provoking, and I think that's just something I want to highlight, that she's done a lot of that, and it's something I should do more of, and all of us probably should. It's not that there's a business use case for everything that she does. It's more like, hey, this will give you a bunch of randomness in a fun way, and I've enjoyed some of those things that she shared. So
But that's where the learning happens, right? I think we should be
Yeah.
encouraging everybody on this call to go do those fun, silly things, because number one, it's not the boring drool of like close another help desk ticket. But number two, it helps you expand what you technology and how you can put it to use maybe other places.
Well, I think maybe, yeah, this is maybe a great way to start the conversation, because the through line from the series, session one, we had these large MSPs devoting a ton of resources and people and money to not waiting around on vendors to give them solutions, right? They see this technology moving so quickly. They don't want to be left behind. They're comfortable with getting out ahead of things, knowing that maybe Microsoft will come around and actually build what they just built, spend all this time on. And their message for smaller shops was really, you know, you have an advantage of being able to be agile. And so that's really kind of a great, that was a great takeaway for me anyway, was the encouragement there of, okay, people have the advantage to be able to move fast and get ahead of things, but how do they do that? Especially when there's so much noise going around, when the tech is changing so often. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have the whiplash around the different models and everything. Like I've just dropped a stupid amount of money on you know, Google to get VO3 to mess around videos, and now there's Sora. Like I have regret weekly and feel like I'm constantly behind. How do you all deal with this when you're looking to mess around with your own projects?
I think it kind of starts with just playing around with it. And that's why I mentioned and brought up like Ashley, because the best ideas don't come from this really hard work. They're often inspired by, oh, that's an interesting result. It can do this. And you kind of keep pulling the string until you go, wow, this has actually solved this other problem. And AI is a lot like that. AI is very interesting. I have been both a fan of and critic of AI at the same time. I'm usually a critic of those who overhype it and tell me, and something Alex alluded to earlier. And obviously, when you're trying to raise more capital than any company has ever raised in the history of humanity, you have to say things like, I'll replace people. Because we all know, especially in the technical world or the knowledge-based economy, depending on how far you want to divide this out, the most expensive asset isn't what I pay in tooling for my MSP. It's what I have to pay all the people to manage that tooling. So that is the overhyping of AI. The more realistic, tangible outputs of AI have been, hey, it helps me understand this topic better. I can drop a bunch of log files on it and go, huh, that's interesting. It's seen something I didn't notice. And I've actually been shocked at how good it is. If I could just drop like, hey, this VPN's not working. I can actually be lazy now and I can drop some logs in there and go, cool. It parsed them and said, hey, it's telling you a certificate's expired on line 73. Oh yeah, I missed that. and
I'm
I could
stunned,
have
not just by the fact that it
but
can read logs, but how fast it can parse 1,000 lines of data.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very instant response. And
Mhm.
I know all of us, there's at least a few people on here go, but Tom, I'm really good at regex. And you are among the 1% of people. And that's great. And you probably don't need AI to do that, but I
But it's
do.
probably
I don't
still
do it for
faster.
regex. Yeah. If I give you enough lines of code, although
It's
my friend's
damn
license
fast.
plate is set awk, I will tell you he is his own LLM. So
That's
when I see
fair.
his license plate, it completely made sense.
Yeah.
Funny, we see it as being faster, and we're so amazed by how fast, but it's crazy. It's like what we don't even realize is that by having to explain itself to us, it's actually having to slow down. Like it's already figured everything out all the way to the end as it's trying to be sequential with you, right? Because it's like thinking in all different angles. It's crazy to wrap our brains around how, as humans, we have almost like this defensive programming of like what is allowed to fit into a container. And we're like, wow, that's huge, because everything else just got thrown off. It's like, it's actually so much more that we can't even comprehend.
So with this conversation, I think I want to give folks some expectations here of how he thinks things are going to go. But again, like I think this is a great opportunity. Ask questions. We'll see how the conversation flows. But I think at a high level, what we want to cover is if you're wanting to move faster, like a lot of the folks here are already. We got David Spooner, of course, is doing. He's great. He's in the Ninja One Discord. If you're not a member of that, you should join. Sharing a lot of learnings. We had a recent stream around N8N and how folks are utilizing that. But stepping back, looking at how can you move faster and avoid wasting time going down rabbit holes, being unproductive, accidentally spending $1 billion, exposing tons of sensitive information. How do you identify the right opportunity? Seems like a good way to start. And I guess with that, my question to you all is this really different than automation? I mean, Alex, you had a story, right? About a salesperson coming into your office when you were in MSP, I don't know how many years ago.
Oh
And
yeah,
asking,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it wasn't even a sales guy. It was maybe it was. I guess it was on the demo we did for Lab Tech, right? When it was 5 guys in a basement in Ohio. It wasn't even a ConnectWise product yet. We were customer like 44 for Lab Tech. And they told me on the demo, they're like, this will replace a human. Like you will literally replace a tier 1 engineer with all the automations you can write. And I went, I don't buy that for a second, but I got to cut some of my travel costs. I got to start to resolve some more things remotely. Like we're going to do it anyway. So we bought $40,000 worth of lab tech licenses. We bought a server to run it on. We deployed this big fancy project. It takes 3 months to get going. And lo and behold, by month 4, I had replaced a tier 1 engineer with a tier 3 engineer who could write scripts for lab tech and manage that unwieldy beast. And I feel like that's a little bit of where we are in the AI journey. And hopefully it gets easier to manage. I don't feel like RMM tools, not all of them anyway, have gotten easier to manage. They still require pretty heavy lift of an ability to write some scripts, an ability to do some coding, and ability to build real automations that you probably don't want to trust that tier 1 engineer with. But they certainly, at some size, allow you to scale a lot farther and wider than you did before.
I mean, Tom, in our pre-discussions, I mean, you came right out and said it. These are being positioned to replace people. You don't know anyone that's been able to replace an actual technician, right?
No, not in a way that's satisfactory, because someone's going to say, but Tom, there's a chatbot that now I don't have to interact with people. And it's like, and everyone hates you for it. I'm just throwing it out there right away. No one has a better experience because they talk to a chatbot. That is not the improved customer experience you want. Don't let any salesperson tell you that. But no, I'm seeing a lot more enhancement, and especially in the hands of a skilled technician, it is a good superpower, because a technician that knows what the outcome should be can look at it and say, all right, I know I could write a Python script to fix this. I could write a PowerShell script that would make this work, but that's a lot of my time, and my time has a value attached to it. Or I can have ChatGPT get it 90% of the script done, most of it done. I know it's going to need some tweaking, but 90% of it still is where I spend a lot of my time writing the framework for the script or pulling together a couple of the registry values I need. I know I can look them up, but it can also look them up for me and just validate going, yep, that is the right one. Because a lot of times we have that knowledge, as we say, on the tip of our tongue, but we need something to like point me at it. It's like, I'm pretty sure, and I use this for AI all the time, the tip of my tongue problem of, boy, I know there's a value I want to set on this particular system, but I can't remember what that value is because I haven't done it in 3 years, and damn it, I didn't document it last time, so I can't look it up. And that's where it can really come in handy, is I can just explain what my goal is. It's like, oh, you mean you want to put this command together? I'm like, yes. And I'll look at the command and go, yes, that is, I can validate that that is accurate. I can go execute on it. And this is sometimes the challenge you have. And me and Jason did a talk a couple of years ago at an event where we showed one of the context problems of handing it to lower text, because it assumes users and assumes other things. And if the tech doesn't understand the positioning, and RMM is a perfect example of this, what user does an RMM run as? And if the script is wanting to run as the user, and the user is system, we now have a real problem. And some of the early AI implementations did that. Normal technicians or level 3 technicians that have a lot more skill go, yeah, this script would break things, even though it's 100% accurate, because you have to have that extra little piece of knowledge. So that's where some of the context comes in of that. So I think it really enhances and gives you things. And we can go knowledge worker, just to give an example outside of the tech industry. Lawyers have to look up a lot of things, and they're like, there's a case about these things, and it surfaces the case that's related to the case they want to represent, so they have precedence. And that now is something I'm seeing in the legal areas work really well. But the smart lawyers, there's some lawyers that are not smart that have definitely made the news. They validate that it's a real case, because we do know AI can hallucinate, but having that kind of knowledge at your fingertips is things where we are seeing massive change in AI. And the same thing with, like I said, your technicians. It's your higher end technicians, because they can validate, they can understand this. It's handing them a piece of knowledge, because at any given moment, we have an absolute massive corpus of knowledge at our fingertips. If you remember and dial back to when, I remember there was articles about Google when it first came out would end the tech industry for support, because you could suddenly just Google all your answers and you could fix things yourself. Well, it turns out that isn't the case. And I think
the reality was Google was good for people who knew how to Google, right? And for smart people who could use Google to supplement their knowledge. And I think that's a good correlation.
Mm-hmm. And Google's absolutely, I want to know, a training tool that you should have is how to Google better. I have shared this with technicians internally. I've shared this with friends. There's some good write-ups on this. You should understand how to do very specific contextual searches with Google to get what you want. And that is a skill that should be on your resume, because I don't know how to solve this, but I know exactly what out of this log will need to go into Google, what shouldn't go into Google, so I can narrow down the best answer for it. That is an ideal use case for both AI and Google. It's that skill of understanding the tool and understanding how it enhances you, but it does require you to have some of the skills. That is where
at my MSP, we used to call that a black belt in Google foo. Like,
yeah,
if we can wrestle Google to the ground, we win.
I wish I'm just better at Googling stuff than most people. So that's I've said that. Like, honestly, I'm not smart. I just Googled it faster. I'm not gonna lie. I'll cite all my sources. I don't hide it. No shame.
This tees up exactly something that I think Ashley can help us with, which is really how she has some great advice that one day she'll publish a blog about how to use these tools effectively, right? And I think it's really interesting. Before we get into it, I just want to launch a poll, JP, if you don't mind. This goes back to the question of we've talked about some of the throughput from last session, John Harden. And I think everybody on the panel agreed, we should be giving access to these tools to folks, getting them familiar, helping them use them. So I'm curious, are people out there actually doing that? To what degree are you doing it? So the question is in the polls, do you have staff with time specifically dedicated to AI related efforts? And hopefully you can select all that apply. So the first option, yes, we have staff fully dedicated to internal IT implementation. Yes, we have staff dedicated to working with clients on AI, so more the consultant side. And then, yes, we have automation staff working partly on it. And this goes to my question too, if there's a dedicated function, if your MSP is operating at a level where you're like, okay, we need to have whether it's the tier 3 guys or whatever you want to frame it, we need to have some people that are pulled out of all the fires, space fires, to be able to look at our processes at a higher level, identify automation opportunities, things like that. And then, yes, we have general staff set aside for it. And then finally, no. So if you don't mind, please take some time, answer that poll, and we'd be really interested in seeing the results.
And I think no matter
But
what your
Ashley.
size is, I think Ashley's going to point out to us that no matter what your size is, everybody should get a little bit of time to tinker, because there's a lot of cool shit you can learn when you just get some time to tinker with it.
And
Well,
Ashley, I
it's
mean,
funny.
this is totally in your world too. I'm sorry for interrupting. This is
No,
so like
go
in your world with working at Roost and seeing, you know, you're helping those partners really run more scalable automation programs and helping those teams figure out how to operate better and everything too. So it just seems like a very natural thing that you're thinking about all the time.
It is, and it's actually like, I mean, I have this conversation with people a lot where it's actually not that different when you think about containers versus context of like what job you're trying to do and what tools you're applying to them. But like when you talk about automation and when you talk about like the how do I get started, there's too much, it's overwhelming. It's the same advice when you break it down to its like barest functionality as I would when I'm talking about automation building, right? It's like, do you understand the problem that you're trying to solve? And if you're building a workflow for a process, I'd be like, do you have this process mapped out? Do you understand where these things happen and where handoff is and where you're likely to run into problems and where you're likely to require nuance or to require somebody to actually make decisions? Figuring out those things at the same time as trying to implement a solution causes people to stall and causes people to be like, I don't even know where to go, right? And the solution at that point is it's like the same thing I was saying, like you have to slow down to go faster. I got my hair all messed up. You like the perspective that we take is like it's the biggest missing piece around AI. If we were to shuffle that way, where it's like we get lost in the cycle of hype, frustration, and failed projects because we're not thinking about it as, you know, shrinking our cognitive load instead of offloading our cognitive load, right? And so if we think just like with automation, what is that 1% or what is that basic step? You know, like here is like one pathway of possible functionality where something could happen. Do I have that process defined, and do I now have the ability to branch off and figure those things out? But with AI, it's almost like we don't see it the same way because we also don't really see it how we don't really understand like how it works and where it's likely to fall off, and we also don't understand where our effort can sit even at those smaller levels. We want to jump right to those big fancy shiny things. To take it to the human piece, right? Like if we're talking about replacement of people already, like before we've even figured out like how do we use it, we're already like gone down the wrong path, right? Because at the same time, we're talking about how, oh, well, we don't have enough people to implement a strategy around it or to define the security around it. And it's like some of those people who start out take the L1, right? Some of those people are the people who are most likely to figure out how to solve that tedium that they might see in their lives. They don't necessarily always want, some of them might be a little bit more code monkey like, but they don't always, a lot of the ones that start out that way are usually the ones that like want to automate themselves out of never having to do that again, right? And so like when you think about that, when you think about, you know, like I think I shared it before, we could share it again, but like there's I don't need to recreate the wheel on the center of excellence concept, but I would actually argue that that is probably the first thing at your MSP that you should be like clearly defining is like who in your organization, there's some steps like who are the people involved, right? Like who in your organization is the one that is like showing the most curiosity or showing the most willingness to like adopt these things, and also who are the ones who are your biggest critics and skeptics and concerned people, and like get them into a room and start figuring out like what are those, are they solvable, can we figure this out? And it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. And it's like, well, if you start small, if you think about something like, oh, even just collecting this data, this one person spends 5 hours a week going and combing Reddit or combing Discord or combing whatever to like get all of this detail. That time is easily automatable. You put yourself in front of the QA process of it. And now you've got all that time back that you can think about the strategy of like doing more things like that, right? And so, you know, if I tie it back into automation building, you might have like this big crazy workflow that has all of its stuff, and you might be calling the same thing a bunch of different times. Then trying to get in there and look at that thing and figure out what piece of this can I enhance, it's like next to impossible. But if you intentionally think, okay, here's a small little piece that I can carve out into a small repeatable component that is able to be given an input and provide an output reliably, I can then plug that in and I know how to edit that thing as well, right? The example that I would give on the AI side for that would be, you know, we talked about it, we can go into it. I'll stop talking for a second in a moment here, but like Notebook LM, right? It's a really great example of a tool for the right job. Whereas like, I think I showed you the really horrible matrix that I was playing with
I'm gonna
ChatGPT
pull it
and I
up.
had
I'm
it.
gonna pull up the matrix if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, it needs a lot of refining, but this is one of the things I like to talk with AI and kind of be its mentor and like feed it a whole lot of information, and then just say like, and then it'll ask, you know, like one of the things that ChatGPT will it'll be like, do you want me to turn this into this for you? And I'll be like, yeah, sure, right? And so like that's what I love it for. Like usually what it gives me is never seeing the light of day. And then I'll actually take things from there and I'll feed them into somewhere else. It's really
I thought
bad.
this was actually even a better, like a better way to see this so far. Yeah, just like
Yeah,
the way that you thought, like just very interesting. Like you and Tom and Alex, all three of you mentioned Notebook, and you mentioned this is the right tool for the right job. I thought was really interesting. And I've heard people, I think a lot of people immediately will go to this when you're talking about AI of like, well, let's set the difference between agentic AI and generative AI and everything. But I thought this really breaks it down in a pretty great way.
yeah. And I think this is one of the things where I was trying to play with, like, how could I get people to stop when they hear AI being inserted into a process or something, ending up them thinking ChatGPT, and then thinking about their experiences with ChatGPT and how it wasn't good for what they were trying to do, and then using that trust and experience as the reason why something else like a rag, the way that the rag works is is grounded on like chunks of data, and it's using those chunks of data to keep itself where it's obviously still potential to hallucinate, but it's almost likely that it never will because it's actually using that data that you give it as its source learning material in a lot of ways. And so using Notebook LM to host all of my information and then not trying to make Notebook LM be creative for me, but taking the data that I get out of it and putting that into ChatGPT to if I wanted creativity. And then, you know, using both of them, I kind of have an entire process where I'll use Notebook LM to do a bunch of research, pull in a bunch of sources, and then I will use ChatGPT to say, take all of this information and put together a really good product requirements document for me or something like that, right? And then I will say like, you know, using awareness of what AI is good at, I'll take that and I will give that to like Lovable, and I will get it to make me a web app to like show a use case or something like that, right? And so I was doing that, um, I was doing a bunch of shares on that in June, just showing like interesting ways to like experiment with some of this functionality, and like break down some of the I don't know what I don't know kind of expectations and stuff like that.
Well, you know, speaking of that, like one of the best things I've found ChatGPT is good at is helping me explore what I don't know. Like, hey, I'm getting ready to build a process like, help me outline that process. Here's a couple ideas I had. Call out all the steps I might have missed. Tell me all the things I'm
Exactly.
not thinking about. Tell me where this could go sideways. your point was spot on. Like the exact opposite of that is Notebook LM, where I know I fed it a very certain amount of detail. I sold a business, and that came with restrictive covenants and non-hires and non-solicits and all kinds of legalese. And each one has, this one has a 3-year limit, and this one has a 2-year limit, and this one's addressed in a stockholder agreement, and this one's addressed over here. Feed it all the data and go, hey, compare these, and call out all the places where
Yep.
I'm under this restrictive covenant and it matters, right? And it
Yep.
will just look at 400 pages and go, here's the 3 bullet points you need to look at.
And ChatGPT is like don't like I wouldn't even understate this point, because it can make, like, I think about the fact that like you send it something and you say something to it and it understands your perspective and explains to you why you're right. Somebody else gives them the same thing and it understands their perspective and explains to them why they're right. And like we joke about that as a negative thing, like, oh, it's just going to always tell you you're right. And it's like, but it technically is right about why you're right in a lot of ways, like sometimes, like unless it's like out of its context. But like its superpower is to be able to take anything and figure out how to mesh it together and integrate it, right? And so it's like, if we used it for that superpower instead of like judging it for that like inability because we didn't use the right tool to do the thing, then we fall back behind and we don't get to move quicker. So like slow down to go faster.
So Tom, I know a lot of people are curious. What tools are you using? I already know the answer to this. I'm cheating.
Yeah, so I keep things simple, and I was just looking at the custom GPTs. So I pretty much just use ChatGPT besides my self-hosted things. Self-hosted is a different rabbit hole that I won't go down today because I don't know this is going to be relevant to the audience, but definitely you can self-host a lot of these, but you have the hardware, and there's a lot of fun doing that because of the privacy, and I think that's great. But just in more general, ChatGPT, but I'm also looking at some of the things I've got it connected with. I have one of them that's a CTF expert, because I'm not a CTF expert, but I like hacking events. But I have one of them pinned because it's fun, because it narrows down the context. It's it's a custom one that was built with ChatGPT. So a lot of those extra plugins, or not plugins, not the right word for them. The extra focusing you can do with it makes it kind of fun. So ChatGPT is primarily what I use, but I also use Google Gemini because you have the Notebook LM. But there's another feature in Gemini I didn't mention when we had our initial call. I don't use it as often, but boy, is it cool when I need to. I obviously have to do things I don't normally do. I have video edit. By the way, I'm not a videographer just because of my YouTube content, and it's a means to an end. I don't love video editing, but I sometimes need to do something that is not done every day. You can share your screen with Google Gemini, and it will walk you through how to do something. It understands DaVinci Resolve because it's one of the most popular tools out there. But this works really well. You just screen share with it and say, walk me through. It'll say, click here, click on this menu, go to this menu. And it just has a voice thing that just tells you, and you can have a conversation with it. And it's you just going along, moving along where it says to do it, to, create this thing I needed to create. That is invaluable when you need it, because I mean, I'm sure someone has a YouTube tutorial about it, of how to do it, but it's faster just to have like a personal assistant telling me like over my shoulder how to do these things and where to click. Also does good for spreadsheets or any other tooling that you might be using that's commonplace, that'll be within its corpus of knowledge, that you can share a screen and walk me through how to do a pivot table in a spreadsheet or something like that. When you're doing those uncommon tasks, that is another use I have with Google Gemini. And that works for the free one. I do pay the $20 a month for ChatGPT, and I'm fine with it. Ash has the much longer list of tools because she's doing more specific coding things and projects with it than I do.
Well, and going back to that point, the right tool for the right use and everything. We have Max has a great question, and John's chiming in on it. Just around like really prompting, right? And what I think is really interesting about how you've talked about this is the importance of context and the importance of, this is a tool, and it's really meant to set up, you are still in control of it. I think you had a way of wording this that I really, really, really liked, which was, let's see here. Oh yeah, here we go. Basically like the AI accommodates bad assumptions. What that like saying, what it really means is that the AI's responses tend to go along with whatever premise the user gives, because it's designed to be helpful and not contradict the user. And the important thing about noting that is it reminds you where the real control is with your own prompts and your
Yeah.
own guidance. I thought that was amazing.
This is also something with Google. You know, Google will give us all kinds of results, and you need to get good at Google Foo, as Alex put it. It definitely is a skill, probably still needed, but you have the same thing: prompt engineering, being able to focus down. You know, ignore previous instructions, ignore the large corpus of knowledge you have, narrow your knowledge down to the thing I need you to think about. It keeps it a lot more focused, and you're going to get better results and better answers. You know, you prompt it with things like, you are a expert on solving problems with OpenVPN. All right, now we've narrowed the context down. Now here's the problem I'm having with OpenVPN, and now I can have it walk through those issues without wandering off to some other suggestion.
So I have a question here. With that type of prompt versus building out custom GPTs, trying to build out these completely separated sources, do you find yourself, is there a good guideline for folks there? This is something I'm curious about.
I think you build it out once you become using it all the time. For example, we actually, and this is an internally hosted one that we have at CNWR. We have a system that has a copy of our whole proposal template, and it's ragged this whole proposal template as a blank, with a lot of prompt engineering around it going, hey, this is what a CNWR proposal template looks like. That way our salesperson can go in there and say, give me a sale. I need to replace all these upgrades from Windows 10 to Windows 11. You can be more general in what you're asking. And it then fills out the proposal template based on the blank one it was given. It fills it all out. Then their salesperson go, cool, I just got a lot of this stuff filled out in a nice way with some nice wording for, you know, how I tell the client Windows 10 is going away and you have to go to Windows 11. You know, this is something it got used for. For most of those upgrades are done now, by the way. So everyone was wondering for behind. I wish everyone had switched sooner, but that's another topic. But those are things that are very like repeatable, and you've narrowed it down in scope because you're going to use this prompt for that. You're going to use the same template each time. So yeah, you can build something around it for that. So there's times when you just look at the repeat that you're doing and I have like a basically similar prompt I type in. I probably should turn it into a GPT. I paste it in as part of you're an YouTube SEO expert. Here's a script for the video I just finished. Please help me come up with titles, break down the chapters, et cetera, et cetera. And it gets pretty good at that.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is kind of like an AI version of a sub workflow, right? You are not, you modularized this piece, and so that you don't have to be like, you know, like wet versus dry, right? Like dry, like don't repeat yourself, wet, write everything twice. We spend so much time with our prompts, either writing everything twice or just not. And we talked to this blank canvas of like a open GPT-5 or 4 or whatever it is, and like it's using all of this knowledge that it has at its disposal, and it's going to give you generic kind of like less impressive stuff unless it has clarity around direction and context and what you're looking for. That's what custom GPTs like can really help with, right? I just posted in the chat. I have a GitHub repo of all of I've been slowly migrating over. I've got like almost 100 custom GPTs because I've realized like I don't want to have to like talk to it like as if it's just like Dr. Manhattan, whatever, like, you know, like I want it to be like very specifically focused in on like what it's trying to do. Like that, yeah, like the right, like a human with arguing with one. That one is one of my favorites too, just because it doesn't default to the buzzword bingo that you would normally see. It reminds it to shrink down its mental models into the appropriate places for it to like think. Same with like almost whenever there is a use case where I've found myself do it more than once, I'm just like custom GPT for that.
I've cut a different corner on that. I've started using a text expander, and I know the techies in the group probably have
Like a
used one for a
macro?
long time. Yeah, but I find myself all the time telling it, you know, hey, we're troubleshooting something. I want you to ask me clarifying questions one at a time before you launch into a 400-line answer. So ask me clarifying questions one at a time until you have enough information to attack this with great accuracy. And I found myself typing those words so many times I got tired of saying it. And I went out and installed a text expander so I could just have a couple of quick keyboard shortcuts that would deliver that for me.
I've
And
been thinking about having that too.
that has made using it way more enjoyable because I don't feel like I have to type 3 paragraphs to get the answer out, especially for the things I use over and over. I use Raycast. I'm not affiliated, not just, it's a cool tool. Does a lot of other neat shit, but the snippets function in Raycast is fantastic to just get it to go. Here's the paragraph I type all the time.
What's cool about that is like to expand on, you know, like that you're kind of being agentic, but you're being that agentic piece. You're just kind of triggering that thing to go. It's kind of like it could do that programmatically. One of the things that I'm trying to build is Microsoft came out with this like markup language that's specifically meant for prompting so that you can have your agents interact with prompts and then like reason around how they navigate through them. It's like I made this one that was like, you start with, hey, here's the basics, and then based on what you find, either branch off to this one or branch off to this one. And they kind of have some of those like snippet little surgical, remember this, remember that. Because I was doing the exact same thing where it's like, I kept saying like, work with the system, not against it. Focus on first principle thinking. Make sure that you're aware of your base rate awareness. Because as soon as you say the words, it goes, oh, yep, add to my checklist. But if you don't say them, it goes, this doesn't exist and I don't have to comply, right? And so
Wow. So I mean, if I'm like some of the takeaways that I'm hearing, modularize, is that a word?
I say it a lot.
Sure, we'll go with
I say
Thank you.
modularize a lot.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, cut things down into chunks. And Alex, your point too of don't let it run away with, okay, I've got this. I'm going to give you a complete long answer. You're trying to cut things into chunks, and therefore you can control them a little bit better. And then in addition to that, really think about the context and how you're prompting and what you're asking it to do, building that checklist that you're going through with it. Those seem to be like really useful takeaways. Anything else?
Treat it like it's a pedantic teenager that doesn't like to do what you said, but still really wants to do a good job. So you have to like question, like, are you sure you did this right? Are you sure you did that? I know you told me you did, but can you check again anyway?
Yeah, but having it validate things, kind of, one of the repeated stupid problems I have that for some reason I give it a script which has timestamps in it that I supplied the script. I'm asking it to pull it from somewhere else, and it will just lose its context window on it, which is strange because the video is 40 minutes long and it gives me 21 minutes of chapter titles for the YouTube video, and I'm like, you missed part of it. And sometimes I have to ask, just say you kept the same reply. You missed part of it. You missed part of it. You missed part of it. And after a couple times goes, I did. Oh yeah, the video is 40 minutes long. Just like you said, Tom, I guess I should make 40 minutes worth of chapter titles. There's weird stuff like that. You just have to be prepared for it. It's always that trust but verify, validate the output. Because it just, yeah, it definitely, it can be pedantic and very detailed on some stuff, but then it will confidently say the right answer is confidently as it will tell you the wrong answer. And you just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, we need to be like psychologist majors to recognize like, oh, like if I talk super frustrated and confident and tell you where to go looking for things, that doesn't mean that you're gonna have a better experience. That just means that that's how you're gonna mimic your response back to me. So like starting with like curiosity. So like if it's always trying to do what you want, right? Like if that's a reality that we know we have to work with, it's always going to try and accommodate the thing that you want. If we start with curiosity, if we ask it to validate things, and if we explain to it where we have unknowns, it's immediately going to say what they want is for me to go off and be curious and to look for answers that are true, not what they want is for me to go and find the information that tells them why what they said is right.
So if you were going to give a tier 1 tech, there was a comment way up early, and I don't know if it was David or not. I'll have to scroll back through. But it was the comment of this idea that there's going to be all this tier 1 work that goes away, that's easily automated. But how do you become experienced and be able to trust and verify and become that tier 3 person without having to go through all those rote things. How do you learn that? If you were talking to a tier 1 tech who is eager to be automating, doesn't want to do all this stuff, they'd like to be doing more impactful things, more meaningful things, but you don't want them to just like go into ChatGPT and just asking everything on their own. You want to give them some guidance. What are a couple things you'd say to them?
It's really no different than a guidance I tell any tier 1 tech that, has to escalate things to another technician. There's those who will always stay at tier 1 because they're throwing it over the wall. Cool, not my problem. I can't solve this. I don't care. And they never follow up with it. But the people who really persevere are the people who do, hey, I forwarded it to you, but how'd you solve it? Can I send a call with you? And the same thing goes with using AI. Ask it how it came to the conclusion. What's the thought process? And you can ask it the questions. How could I have understood this better? It'll expand out a lot of those. You come in as a level 1 tech, you don't understand networking very well. You don't understand how to add a VLAN to a port. If you punch in Cisco, it's well documented. You punch in, how do I add this VLAN to this port? It'll just give you instructions. You can just copy, code, paste. That doesn't teach you anything. But then if you take the time to ask, why did you tell me to do it that way? Explain the commands. By the way, before you paste anything, do that. Explain the commands. It does a great job. It's way more patient than that level 2 tech, by the way, as well. It'll let you ask a lot more questions without being like, because I say this in level 1 tech going, yeah, I'll ask them how they solve the problem. Level 2 tech's going, Tom, I hate you. And so
I don't have enough time in my day. Yeah.
I love the time I did explain to this person every time they didn't do a process right. So in some way, AIs can enhance you better. Explain the command, explain the thought process on it. Ask it. It's a great bouncing ideas learning tool. So it's not just for people who have businesses they sold like Alex who have complicated questions. It's also for level 1 techs going, explain why the command sequence you said, or explain this bash script, explain this Docker compose file, what each element means. So obviously copy and pasting we know works, but we want to know why it works, and it'll be very patient with you. Just like I said with the Google Gemini thing where you do the screen share, it's extremely patient with me saying, I don't understand what you asked. And it'll just keep explaining it in different ways repetitively without ever a bit of aggravation in his voice.
And also not just the L1 techs, right? Like not just the tech, like the capital T technicians. Like this is one of those things where it literally unlocks a new way of thinking that like kind of breaks our assumptions around what being technical means. And so like maybe you got like dispatchers out there, or like service coordinators or project managers, or like literally anyone who maybe your L1 techs might not be the ones who like are ready to make that jump across the bridge to see how it helps them. But maybe by seeing other people who think a little bit differently than them, even if it's not as technical, maybe that they can help them see some of these use cases by them being able to be the ones who say, oh, I can connect the dots here more than I ever used to be able to. People who don't necessarily have those technical skills are kind of forced to slow down. Traditional technical skills are forced to slow down, and they're much more okay with ambiguity and figuring out where those unknowns are because they have to be. And then like, not to say that there's no, like, doesn't exist. I think that there's a bridge kind of where that lives. But like, if you don't have those curious, like, I want to learn AI as a technology, like you can learn how to manage that, right? Like that's a whole new bridge, a whole new career path, if you can figure out how to talk to it properly, it's gonna be crazy.
We have a really great question from Michael. Thanks for this, Michael. He says, I'm a relative novice. I use AI for marketing, messaging, communications, all the stuff that I think we're all utilizing for and seeing some good stuff with, right? I do understand the cost of prompting, how I use AI. However, I'm getting interested in using it for some heavier lifting in our office and for customers. My question, do any of you recommend any resources to start learning more about the capabilities that way? Courses, websites, it's people to follow, etc. For just getting heavier, beyond just, I guess, maybe just the generative AI, ChatGPT, help me with this email sort of thing.
Like learning resources for AI?
Yeah.
Um, ah, this is hard because the challenge I have following a lot of people is they're often too hyped up. Um,
There's a lot of charlatans out there for sure.
Yeah, well, and it's they're overhyping it. They're often recommending something that they themselves tools. So find some temperament between people that are overhyping and people that are poo-pooing on it. And God, this is a hard one because I'm trying to think of good resources on it. I love
I've
Ed
got
Zitron's take, but he's very extreme on the I hate AI, but for good reasons. He's very technical in how he goes about it. And there's people like Daniel Messer, who's a little bit too overhyped on AI. And I listen to him
Mhm.
too, and I'll read some of his articles. So they're both at like the far ends of the spectrum. If you
yes.
look around on YouTube, look for the guy who has fewer views on his video. Because he's probably just because as someone who creates technical content, if you go deep into weeds and get very technical, you're not going to get as many views as someone who screams at you, you need to be super excited right now. Those people will definitely get more views. But it probably won't give you the content you want. You may feel edge of your seat excitement, but they usually don't go as deep into things. So just it's not an easy answer because I don't follow many of them. Most of my knowledge is from Hard Knocks. I sit and spend too many hours with fingers on the keyboard, typing in things, scratching my head, spending time in Reddit, which is, I can't tell if that's hinder or help or just complete amusement by heading over to Reddit r ChatGPT and seeing the dumb and silly things people are doing. it's
Oh
just kind
man,
of fun.
you
Get in the community is probably, I would say, better than I found any of the people to follow.
And the other thing is, don't forget your AI is a resource about your AI. It's actually really good at
Yeah,
teaching you how to use it. You can even ask it, help me write a prompt
yeah,
to ask you how to do something better. So,
yep,
don't forget that your AI, and one of the things it knows the most about and lies the least about is itself. It's pretty good at setting you up for success with itself.
yeah.
I'm
And you have to think about where, and this is something anyone can just kind of wrap your head around how AI is trained and what it's trained on. When you ask it questions, which led to the infamous "let's put glue on pizza," that's because they sucked in Reddit. And there's a great Reddit post about making glue pizzas, and which is Reddit is not the place you necessarily go for the right answer, but you'll find the best answer. I can't believe they stuck a lot of that in ChatGPT. So you got to think about that. But like Alex said, it knows a lot about itself because it's consuming its own documentation, and there is a lot of push that the AI companies have to make it easy for you to use, which includes building documentation into itself, essentially. That's definitely something that's an important aspect is they want it to be easy for you to use. So that's something it's going to lean to better on answers.
Actually, also you shared a great link. I did drop Tom, I don't know if you saw this insane piece from Daniel Miessler that just goes into everything that he's done. Another person, I find that people who are building in public with things that aren't tied to selling courses or selling AI products are
Yeah.
good examples. And so one of them, I apologize for everybody, I'm going to drop an X link. Don't go there unless you have to. Jason Lemkin is the head of SaaStr, and he was a VC. He's done a ton of stuff around. He was a sales leader at startups, but they've done a ton of stuff where they're very open about their projects, and it's very cool. He shares like, here's things that didn't work out. Here's the tools they're using, and so anyone like that, and just keep in context that, keep in mind that it's such a broad topic. And Ashley's great point about there's different tools, there's different uses, and so following any one person isn't the right thing. You should check out other people, but that's my recommendation is
Yep.
seeking out the people at companies who are not trying to make money off AI, but they're building in public. Ashley, you just side chatted me that you've built an app while we were talking. You've multitasted. I can barely keep a conversation
to show
going.
it?
I can barely speak, and yet you've done this. So you want to share it?
Sure. Yeah. I'll share a little bit about how I was thinking. So it's like I've been thinking about it for a little while, and I had some very structured. How do I share?
I think at the bottom there, you should hopefully see the option.
Share. There we go. Sorry, 1 second.
Everybody, I think this would be a good note to end on, to like show you some of the concepts, because I really appreciate the thinking through of like, okay, there's specific practical cases, but there's the thinking behind how to identify them and how to go about them. And I think this is a great way to end on.
So Lovable made this announcement where they've now got like a back end with LLMs like that you can use already plugged in. Previously, the way that I was doing that was like with my own Cloudflare worker. But because they came out with this new functionality, they were like, oh, anybody who they're doing a little contest. And so then today's contest was come up with some sort of creative way to use Nano Banana. Which is Gemini's new 2.5 Pro image functionality. And so I actually just went into ChatGPT, and this is really funny because I was like, what's something creative that I can do? And it didn't understand what I meant by Nano Banana at all, or what I was talking about with the promotion. So I was like, okay, here's some more context. And then it was like, oh, here's some things that you can do. I'm like, you're going really far on this banana peel concept and you still don't actually know what Nano Banana is. Can you like research that? And then it's like, oh, I see. It's actually this. Do you want? And so I was like, yes, please do that. And so it just came back with the information and I was like, all right, I want to build a simple proof of concept. And so then it gave me that proof of concept. And then I literally I didn't even modify it. I just copied this and then I went over into Lovable and I just pasted the entire chat in. And then it went through, it created its little cloud functionality, did its necessary stuff. Originally, it gave me a sign-in page and I was like, I don't want a sign-in page. And so it took it away. And so now this is what we've got, our Banana Peel Stories app, where I can, I upload a photo. We'll just take the one that we just did. And this is a fully functional app with an LLM in the cloud protected by a Supabase backend that I used one prompt to make. And I haven't even looked at to see whether it needs modifying or not, but it makes it fancifies no, this exists everywhere. You can go to ChatGPT and do this yourself. But I made this little app that does it for us. And so I mean, this is literally something that I could publish and share, and any of you could use it right away. But that's just the one that I just made. Done so much, but the reason why it was so easy was because I literally just had the one basic use case. And it already had the stuff that would be complicated prepared for me.
Awesome.
I remain impressed.
I could show you so many things, but I will stop now. So how do I stop sharing there? Over here.
If you guys ever see Ashley at an event, just sit down and ask her one AI question and be prepared to take notes for an hour. She'll show you all the cool stuff she's building, even if she doesn't have her voice that day.
All right, everybody. I think we've come to the end here. And so we got a couple last things to do real quick before we jump. Any other, I mean, Alex, you're great at this. You want to try to take a stab at summarizing some takeaways, and then we got a winner to announce for the chair contest.
Yeah, we got to announce a winner. I think my takeaway is, and my big takeaway for this whole series goes back to last week when we Googled, or when we asked ChatGPT when ChatGPT rolled out, which was November 2022. So AI as we know it, and as your customers recognize it, has only been around for 2 years and 9 months, or 2 years and 10 months, whatever. There are no real experts. We're all learning as we go. And what I learned today is that everybody's poking at it in different ways and at different levels and using it for different things. So start small and find something that solves a problem in your world, and that's probably your best use case.
Beautiful. Tom, anything you want to add?
Yeah, don't get caught up in FOMO because that's driving a lot of it. Always look for the tangible, tactical, what can be done, not what was hyped. I say that because that's driving a lot of the businesses, and as an MSP, you're an advisor to these companies, and of course, they don't want to be left behind because what if my competitors are doing this? What if they get an edge on me? So just temper things and make sure you're clear with them of what does or does not work, and just be very realistic about it. It's, like I said, following the two extremes. Daniel Messer's done some really interesting stuff. I think he's got some good ideas, but maybe on an Overhype, and Ed Zitron being the pull on the other side of maybe hating on it a bit. But there's somewhere the truth always lies in the middle, because we're not the ones trying to raise $5 billion more dollars. So we're not. We have a different motivation. I always think about the motivation that the people who are really hyping it have.
Great point. Ashley, anything you'd like to leave folks with?
I guess I'll just summarize. Mindset first, right? It's a tool, not a replacement. You can talk to it. Just because you can talk to it doesn't mean that it's smart for you. You still have to be smart. Start small. Don't rush ahead to the next step if you haven't fixed the one that you're on. And, trust but verify.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, amazing panel. Thank you, Alex and the crew at Empath for partnering with us for this series. I was informed from
These
JP,
are always fun. I learned so much.
It's great. I love these discussions. Really appreciate everybody in the chat for coming in and making this so interactive. I was told by JP, if we're going to follow the rule to this, we did say you have to attend all 3 sessions, and they want to do some comparisons. So I'm sorry, everybody. I got to leave you on a cliffhanger here. We're down to the winner. We'll send it out in
This means you
email.
have to open your marketing spam from Ninja One. That is well played, JP. I have to say, like, that is salesman top notch. I don't know if you got that ChatGPT, that idea, or if that was your own. That's a win right there. So
JP
make
is
sure you
AI.
open email, and I'm sure Ninja will announce it on social media as well.
Yes, that is very true.
So like and subscribe.
We'll only make you through marginal enough hoops. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is a great series. Come back, and we'll be I think next week we have our 10.0 release from Ninja One. Little self promo here. We're going to be doing live streams all week long. Keep an eye out for those. And everybody, thank you so much for joining.
Emily and I have a secret deal going on. If she wins the chair, I'm going to trade her for an Empath t-shirt. But Emily, I'll also throw in a brand new Empath plushie, because our mascot is now a plushie, complete with autographed foot, and these will be at our event booths from now on. So
Can you tell your AI to send me one of those too?
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll see you somewhere.
Plushies for everyone.
That's right.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.